of transgression, one that can, in fact, destabilize gender, as Sheila had argued in her paper? Or is religion, at least the dominant representations of religion, already structured in such a gendered, as such a gendered space that the possibilities for destabilization are incorporated back into a more traditional or conventional framework? In other words, is religion itself already so gendered that it provides a kind of venue to talk about gender, when in fact what's happening is that they're incorporated into themselves into a more conventional paradigm? This kind of leads me to some of the questions that emerge for me from these papers in terms of my own work and what I've been thinking about. And I've been thinking, you know, what I'm specifically interested in is the contemporary cultural context of consumerism and gender and media. And all of these shows are contemporary, except for Maude, I guess, but even Maude could be said, you know, 71, so 72. So, but all the other shows are contemporary shows. And so I'm wondering what it is about the contemporary cultural economy that provides a context for these kinds of representations of religion and gender to gain a kind of traction and to resonate with an audience or audiences in a particular kind of way. And I would say, just on thinking about this, that the cultural economy, the current cultural economy of television, encourages a gendered representation that is marketable as a commodity in this particular economy. And just briefly, I want to talk about that, and then I'll open it up for questions. And Anthea said that I can't remember if it was Grace or Kara or both, I would argue both, were post-feminist icons, right? In the sense that there was a certain kind of celebration of the body, celebration of sexuality, empowerment through the body. Xena clearly is a post-feminist icon. She's kind of a kick-ass woman who, you know, who is also about exploring sexuality. She refuses to settle into a sexual identity and instead keeps us guessing. That's part of her appeal. Who is she? What is she? Who does she sleep with? Who does she want to sleep with? The kind of keeping us guessing that is part of this post-feminist identity that is so marketable in this particular moment. They're not afraid, as you said, Anthea, Grace is not afraid to be potty-mouthed, right? She's not afraid to smoke cigars. She's not you know, neither, or actually, Grace or Kara or Starbuck, they're the same person, right? Okay, I didn't say that. Grace or Kara or Xena are all very comfortable in stepping into a masculine role, easing into this, challenging it, kind of, you know, flipping off people from that position and saying, this is who I am, I'm female, I'm empowerment, and so on. The kind of definition of the post-feminist icon in the contemporary cultural economy. The definition that has been so marketable and presented to us as such a commodity through anything that ranging from television shows to clothing to sexual practices to you know, to all sorts of different kinds of commodities. So they clearly seem to me to resonate within that economy. Heather's paper really made me think of the kind of contemporary representation of abortion and pregnancy. And one of the things that it's interesting to me about the televisual representation of pregnancy and abortion is that it certainly doesn't follow any kind of logical, chronological, progressive trajectory. Because in fact, we can easily say that if we look at where we are now, we've certainly gone backwards from where we were in 1972 with Maude. So it doesn't follow a progressive trajectory. It follows a political narrative rather than a historical one. So the fact that Maude had an abortion on television in the 1970s, that Cagney, she talks about Cagney and Lacey in another area, Cagney might have been thinking of one in the 1990s, would perhaps indicate that the secularized portrayal of abortion on House's first couple of seasons would make a kind of progressive historical sense. But however, since that airing of House in the first season, we have had in broader media culture what I would call, in the vein of Robert Goldman's commodity feminism, commodity pregnancy, where pregnancy has been given a particular romantic frame that is then sold as a particular kind of commodity. We don't have to look very far to find commodity pregnancy. We have the glorification of pregnant celebrities in gossip magazines and television shows. We have new fashion lines determined to make the pregnant woman sexy, desirable, and fashionable instead of tired, bloated, and wearing sweatpants all the time. We have public forums that are devoted to celebrity baby names and why they're so stupid. And, well, some of them are why they are so stupid. We have baby watches that often take place in exotic places like Africa and the south of France, where we sit waiting, breathless, for another celebrity to have a child, and all the kind of hoopla that goes with it. Makes you feel sorry for all those poor women who have babies in local hospitals, you know. But we also have what seems to be a new film genre in which young, beautiful women get pregnant and have children. I'm thinking here of Knocked Up, Quinceañera, and Juno. Very different films. All three very different films. All three have very different politics, but the idea of the baby as a blessing is present and sustained in all of them in different ways. Then, of course, we have even a broader public representation of pregnancy and motherhood and how it relates to our own life. Again, with the celebrities, the obsession with Britney Spears and her fitness as a mother, her 17-year-old sister Jamie Lynn Spears, whose pregnancy caused Nickelodeon to ponder over whether Linda Ellerbee would air a special edition of Nick News that talked about sex and pregnancy outside of wedlock. And I cannot end without talking about the most recent public figure who has been blessed with a baby at 17, our friend Bristol Palin. And the whole shifting of that narrative and the framing of that narrative about the blessing of that baby, about the failure, the abject failure of abstinence-only education, kind of positioning of Sarah Palin as the dutiful mother and grandmother, all framed within the context of religion, all framed within the context of a particular kind of religious allegory that kind of wipes away any of the contradictions, hypocrisies, and problematics that surround that particular event. So I guess I want to say in closing that I'm not implying that because I think that there is a kind of commodification of gender that allows for shows like this to create particular representations rather than others. And I'm not necessarily saying that these representations are complete failures in transgressing boundaries and destabilizing gender identity. I actually don't think that they are. I think that they do very interesting things in terms of these identities, in terms of destabilization and transgression. But I am saying that that the contemporary cultural economy helps shape this potential destabilization. It helps give it a kind of logic, and so it assists it, even as it seems to be positioned in opposition to it. So that the presentation by these kinds of shows of a commodified gender trouble to TV watchers as a kind of purchase that we can make and targeted to a market of consumers makes a kind of perfect kind of sense. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, panelists and Sarah for setting up. I'm glad you mentioned Palin. I was thinking about her as religious mother, but also kind of a kick-ass action hero. So she fits very nicely into that frame. I'd like to open up the discussion to members of the audience. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, in regards to the first paper about Zena, you mentioned in passing kind of a throwaway that Superwoman had existed previously. I know this is a short paper and had to be truncated for our purposes here, but I'm sure you thought about putting Xena in the context of the female superhero in general on television, because quite a lengthy legacy going back at least as far as I know to Honey West in the 60s, and then we have Police Women, 70s, Charlie's Angels, and Wonder Woman. So in other words, there's a whole legacy. I would be interested in your observations about what is significant and different about Xena in comparison to these earlier